agenda.
Thanks, Debbie.
Second that.
Awesome. All in favor of the consent agenda, raise your hand. Perfect. That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. We get to hear from Carter. Carter's joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Carter, for spending just a few minutes of your evening with us.
Of course, it's always fun. So yeah, I just have a few things that I want to talk about from the students at CHS. One of the things that we're working on lately is our leadership has a clothing closet that we're starting up. So it's really fun, and it's been a work in progress. It's something that we started to get the ball rolling with right before COVID, and then COVID kind of put a pause on it, and now we're getting back into things. So we just got space looked at, and we're starting to move forward with cleaning that out and moving the clothes in. So hopefully kids can have a place where if they're needing some extra toiletry items or clothes, they can go and get those. Another thing that we wanted to talk about is we have a new mural coming up at the high school. It's for Peace Club, and they were just painting it today out at with a little bit of sunshine we got. They were painting it after school, so that was really exciting. And then we have prom this weekend, which is getting very fastly approaching, and we're all very excited for. And we just recently had our ASB elections for next year, and they're having the class elections this upcoming week. So yeah, it's pretty much all I have from the high school students.
Fantastic. Any questions for Carter? So what is the mural going to look like? What's the theme, or what's the picture of?
Honestly, I'm not exactly sure. They were just getting to the first steps, so they were drawing it out. And it's kind of weird because last year we did a mural, and with leadership, we were all seeing it and getting to see the processes. And unfortunately, I'm not in Peace Club, but okay. I haven't been able to see all that. I think Miss Collins might have something to say.
Miss Collins.
I just really want to use the raise your hand function. I don't know how to get it off there. I'll lower it now. So the Peace Club and Miss Warner, who is the advisor for that club, brought this beautiful picture that involves koi fish swimming with different colors on their fins to represent our student populations. And so it will be in similar colors to the mural that we already have there, is what has been presented. But yeah, they're just getting it drawn out. But I believe that Lily Heltman drew the picture. Is that correct, Miss Warner?
Yes, it is.
Yes, she's saying yes. So it is actually student art that will be on the wall. So it's very exciting.
That is very cool. Very cool. All right. Anything else for Carter? Okay. I hope you guys have a great time at the prom this weekend. All right. You can certainly get onto your evening, Carter. Thanks so much. Okay. All right. Curriculum presentation. Mike, do you want to do introductions and get this started for us?
Sure. Let's see. Amy Aguero is going to talk about the ELD curriculum, the presentation that we need to look at to adopt with our to complete our ELA adoption process. So I'm just going to ask Amy to get in there and lead the way.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so we have for this presentation, your third and final curriculum presentation for the year, our ELD team K-12. So we have Heidi, who's representing our middle school, and Corey, who's representing our high school, and Bethany is representing our elementary, but also has a very broad K-12 lens herself. And so today you're going to be hearing about two different curriculums. And the team did an open house last week at the Creswell building, where they had a few families show up where they could give them a real in-depth tour in person on the curriculums. And they'll share a little bit more tonight about what each of those K-5 and then our middle high school program, what those look like. And I'll turn it over to Bethany, I believe, is going to be sharing her screen.
Okay, bear with me. I've never done this from Google.
But Bethany,
No worries.
Bethany, I wanted to make sure you know I just made you a co-host, so now you can share your screen.
Okay, let's see. I want to share this. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so this year we also have the task of looking at all of the wonderful new curriculum that's out there for English language development. So our team kind of already, well, I think, Heidi, were you on the ELA adoption? I can't remember. Anyway,
No, I wasn't.
we went through the process, the similar type of process as we did with the ELA adoption. So our team, Corey Warner at Creswell High School, Heidi Bracas at Creswell Middle School, and then I represent the elementary school for this. So we kind of came up with some ideas about what we wanted, and it comes down to the curriculum that we had in the past was kind of like an English language arts program that we had to do a lot of adapting to for the secondary students. And we wanted to find something that was more true English language development that focused more on what our students need in that aspect, not just English language arts, and then having to do a lot of adapting. So we found something that is a true ELD program, not ELA light as we call it. It promotes academic discourse and prepares students for success in the core. So it helps them with their language arts classes as well. Includes opportunities for text annotation. It's really important that they know how to take notes, digital and physical, everything. And then leveled by grade level as well as English proficiency level. So it's really important that we meet students where they're at as far as their language development, not just their grade level. And then, of course, research-based strategies for each domain. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It's very important. And then also engages students. We want them to really want to read the stories with us and have those conversations that are sparked by those stories. So, and teacher-friendly scope and sequence. So some of them can be very complicated and we don't have a lot of time with our students. So we need to get in there and time is short. So we want to be efficient with our time with them. So that was our wish list. So for the secondary schools, we discovered English 3D, and English 3D goes along with our ELA choice for secondary, which was Houghton Mifflin. So it pairs well. It presents the topics that the students study as issues. So the students get to talk about them, discuss them, read and write about them, which you'll see a little bit more about one of the issues. There are multiple opportunities for the students to work on academic language throughout each lesson. So, and then it's very engaging. And the work text is very colorful and there's a lot of opportunities for interaction. The digital platform is also very user-friendly. And it, of course, is aligned to the standards. And then Reach Higher is the elementary ELD curriculum that we're proposing. It's an updated version of what we already have at the elementary school, but they streamlined a lot of things that were more language arts and not ELD. So it's better. There's going to be a lot less work on the teacher side of it for what to leave out and what to supplement. So it's very engaging. The students love, it's made by National Geographic. So all of the photographs, and the nonfiction stories are very engaging and beautiful photographs. So, and it has a lot of content connection. So there are music, health, social studies, math, history, arts, all embedded within the content. And then they're utilizing their language to learn about the content as well. So, and of course it has digital and physical work texts. So I like both of these options because we can choose what's better for each student. We can individualize. And then if we need more practice, we can move over to the digital and do more practice with the digital. So both of those programs come with both. So let's see. I'm going to show you a little bit about Reach Higher. Because it's a kindergarten through 5th grade, I chose 2 only to show you. But here are some sample pictures of the textbook. So you can see they're very colorful and engaging. And this story in particular, level 5A, is a story about how to make a solar oven. And my 5th graders love this. Every year we make it and we test it out and we cook nachos in the window and they love it. And it's a how-to article. And then at the end of the unit, they get to write their own how-to article about something else. So they get very inspired, and then they practice all of their following directions, and then they have to write directions for someone else to follow. So they're practicing their language the whole way. And then this is an example from a 1st grade text. So very beautiful pictures still, and a lot of interactive opportunities for students to discuss with each other, as well as to discuss what they've read about and to write about what they've read about. So does anyone have any questions so far? I can't see everyone, but.
I don't see anybody yet, Bethany. You're doing
Okay.
great.
Great. Okay. And then one more slide just about Reach Higher. This is kind of the scope and sequence. So it for teachers, this is my the thing that I like to see because it tells me, it helps me make sure that I'm teaching what I need to be teaching, and it helps me figure out, if I need to target a certain skill or a language function, I can go to this and I can find it very easily. So it's very teacher friendly. And that's it. And then I think Heidi was going to talk about the next section.
Want to just keep sharing your screen, Bethany?
Sure.
Cool, thank you. This is the first issue from the level A, and I actually got an opportunity to practice this with my ELD class, a couple of the students when the other students were at outdoor school, and they really, they found it really engaging. And so the curriculum shows issues in their real life, like applicable issues to what's going on in their real life. For example, this one was how much screen time is too much, which I think all students and parents can relate to. But we look at the work students are doing in the building community lessons, and students are not only discussing the topic, but they're also practicing how to be a good communicator with a grammar and vocabulary built in. And this is the online workbook, but the printed copies look the same as well. And yeah, like I said, very engaging and relevant issues to students. In the next slide. And then this is just an example of some of the worksheets that we could work on and practice those skills. And it has the writing is very scaffolded to meet students where they're at. And so this is the English 3D language and learning objectives to ensure that we're meeting all of the objectives that ELD students need. English 3D is suitable for long-term English learners and typically those who continue to struggle with academic content. It builds off of the topic or issue to allow practice with how to communicate in oral language and written language effectively in an academic manner. And then the next slide I'm very excited about this because we got a month-long trial, and so we got to try this out in our classroom. And the teacher can view a ton of different writing assignments and create our own, or we can choose relevant writing assignments from their lessons. We can also see quickly which students are working on the assignments and which assignments need to be graded. It also helps to grade for us. It will check their grammar automatically, and I can give instant feedback to students, which they really like. And they complete the writing process, and it makes grammar and spelling corrections super easy for them to check independently before they submit it. And then the bottom picture is the student view. And then I don't know if you can zoom in, but it's really easy, and like they get feedback and it's almost like instant. And so the students have really enjoyed using that. And so here are some of the things that we think about the program. It's on the next slide. Is that students have been motivated to read the interesting stories. Oh, this was from yours, Bethany, from the Reach Higher curriculum, and the routines are fun and give students many opportunities to share their ideas and their thinking in an academic way. Students who don't typically volunteer to read during their core language arts they regularly do volunteer to read and participate in discussions with this curriculum. The additional language guides throughout each lesson and gives student concrete examples of how to communicate about activities, which they can immediately put to use in all of their academic classes. And then my students stay engaged throughout the whole lesson, and the topics are really relevant to their age group. I think Corey was going to do the next slide.
Yep, I'll jump in. Thank you. Yeah, and so Heidi mentioned that, and Bethany mentioned that we've been piloting this with some students, a few units to kind of test out some of the different features at the elementary and the middle school. Unfortunately, because of the timing of when we got the samples and when my ELD class ended at the high school, I wasn't able to pilot anything with them, but I've looked at the curriculum, and I agree that I think there's a lot of really fantastic features to this this curriculum. And besides what the teachers are saying, great things about it, we're hearing a lot of good things from the students too. So they are really interested and engaged in the stories and the other features like the songs and the kind of the topics that the issues are created around. And I also think it's noteworthy to see that in some of these quotes from the students that they are also kind of taking note of the academic piece of it and how it's going to support them to become better academically and in the long run. So like a fifth grader talking about, I'll be ready for middle school. And, a sixth grader saying, I like to get the feedback, which is like suggesting that they want to improve, and they're seeing how this curriculum could help them do that. And then we also held a drop-in open house on May 2nd from 5:30 to 6:30 at the library at Creswell. And the three of us were there along with Mr. Varro for Spanish interpreting. And we had a couple of family members, parents drop in and take a look at the different levels of curriculum and give some feedback. So one parent, that's a parent of 12th grader, 7th grader, and 3rd grader, so has students in all the different levels, thought that these books looked more interesting than the previous curriculum we had. Like the way that they were set up with pictures and just the design looked more engaging to her. And she thought it would make it easier for the children to do the activities and be more included with more of the images and more cultures there, and just simpler to use the way that it was structured. Another parent of a 1st and 9th grader said, I like the books and the information in the books. And then another parent of a 1st grader said that they thought that their son needs more reading and to practice the words. And we feel like this curriculum will provide that needed practice. So are there any other questions or comments about the curriculum that we've presented.
I think that's a great presentation. I appreciate hearing and seeing the examples. And I believe Bethany had said that there's a digital version so that we make sure that our online academy kids are able to use it as well. Okay, that's great.
If we had ELD students in the online academy, they could.
Okay, yes, I guess that's a big assumption. I'm trying to train myself since, I mean, after COVID, the online academy is new. So I'm trying to train myself that I don't just imagine what my kids are going through, but the online kids as well. So thank you for that.
We could for sure. We could definitely do that though.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for Heidi, Bethany, or Corey? Okay, and I think this is the third component, and this wraps up all of the ELA curriculum pieces, right, Mike?
Yeah, this is the last
Okay.
curriculum that we need to adopt.
Okay. All right. I love the fact that we're getting stuff from National Geographic. My kids eat that stuff up. So when you can get that into a curriculum that's school-wide like that, that's amazing. Okay. All right. So in terms of our process and our agenda, we have the adoption of this further down in the agenda. You guys are welcome to stay on if you want, but we do have another presentation that's going to be a little bit. You are also welcome to get back to your busy evenings because I know you all have families and many other things that you need to get to. So you won't offend us a bit if you drop off, and I'm sure Mike will communicate tomorrow the probably eventual adoption. I'll just forecast because the teams have done a great job so far of both presenting and picking. And so it's fantastic for our board to see the different curriculum. And it's actually really refreshing to get back to things that are focusing on kids because it's been a lot of different policies that have been so regulation based around COVID. This has been actually really fun for the board to see. So we really appreciate the time that all you guys spend with us on your evening for it.
Good job, team.
Okay. Yeah, good job. All right. All right. So we will move on to our next presentation. And so we have Vince Adams from OSBA. I asked Vince to come after Debbie and I met with Mike and we were discussing leadership and realizing that, oh my gosh, it's already May. Next month we'll be here soon. We need to figure out what we want to do with our board evaluation tool. And as we've discussed earlier this school year, we've done several different kinds of evaluations, but what we have not done well is wrap in the actual improvement piece. So we get the feedback, but then individually, it's been really hard for all of us to figure out what do we need to improve as a board and what do we prioritize. So Vince has a new tool with OSBA he's going to walk us through, and then we can chat about how we want to use that, if that's what we want to use, so that we are ready to go, hopefully in the next month or in June to do some improvement for ourselves as a board. So Vince, are you ready to share and take over?
I sure am. So Chair
Okay,
Install,
thank you.
Superintendent Johnson, Creswell Board, thank you for having me this evening. I really would love to get down there and see you folks. I'm just up the road in Corvallis. I mean, I'm not that far away. And actually my mom lives just up in the hills, up in Dorena, to the south of you. So it'd be great to split that trip and yeah, anyway. So board self-assessment, this is really exciting. This is an exciting time here at OSBA because as Lacey said, we have adopted a new board self-assessment tool. We're really excited about it. I've been doing a lot of these talks. And the reason that we're doing these is because we, folks that have been doing board self-assessment a lot are really familiar with the 5 roles of the board and that approach to doing self-assessment. We've been doing that for a long time. For those of you who don't know, I should probably start at the beginning. Hi, my name is Vince Adams. I work with OSBA. I'm a board development specialist. I started with OSBA in April of 2020, right as we went into the pandemic. but before that, I was working with OSU Extension, doing strategic planning with communities. But I caught the school board bug. I live here in Corvallis, and I sit on the Corvallis School Board. So I'm just your colleague from the north, as well as working for OSBA. So I've done board self-assessment, done a lot of board self-assessment myself, and so I'm familiar with the process. So back to the 5 roles of the board and all of that. So we have transitioned the 5 roles of the board. I'm getting ahead of myself. Because I'm so excited to talk about this topic. Hey, I should probably share my screen. Sorry, I'm all keyed up. I just gave this talk with another school district here. Is that
You're
coming
doing
through?
Great, Vince.
Is
Yeah,
that coming through
we're pretty
okay?
informal. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
We're pretty informal, so you're doing great. Just keep on going.
All right. Thanks for the vote of confidence here. Okay, so so no OSBA talk would be complete without a mention of policy. And so I did not check. I did not go online and check to see if you guys have a policy BK, but if you don't, you should. So homework for you, go and check and make sure that you have a policy BK, the board committing to evaluate itself, because we expect our school districts to commit to continuous improvement. Well, we should have that expectation for ourselves. And the way that a board expresses its expectations is in policy. So here's the obligatory mention of policy. So go ahead and check and make sure. Board self-assessment is a really salient topic right now, because in the last legislative session, all the folks here at OSBA, we were really surprised to see SB 334 fail, and that was the mandatory training bill for school boards. Now, there are many states in America that require training for their school boards. Oregon is not one of those states. So there's no expectation that you have any training whatsoever to serve on a school board, for better or for worse. And so, but the planks of this law, and we fully expect that this is going to come back in the long session and will be successful. There's a lot of energy behind this bill, and it'll get a new number and get recycled, and it may change form a little bit. It has changed form over time. It's been presented twice now to the legislature and it's not been approved. So, but we think this next time it will. But the overall structure is going to require that boards do a self-assessment every 2 years, that you develop some sort of plan of development, over the course of those 2 years, and that you report on your work on that plan. So, and that report is in your public meeting and it's to your constituents. So board self-assessment is here and it's here to stay, and we're all going to be doing it. It's probably going to be required under statute. So this, I don't expect you to digest this slide. There's a lot of information here. For those of you who have been doing school board work for a while here in Oregon, you probably heard of lighthouse inquiries, some research that was done in the late 90s and into the early 2000s by Tom Ellsbury, Mary Delagardelle. And really the take home from the lighthouse inquiries was the connection between board practice and student outcomes. And what they tested was, if you apply training and intensive training on school boards, will they change their behavior and practices? And does that have an impact on student outcomes? And in fact, they found that it did. And they did it once, and then they broadened the study and did it again and found the same finding. And since then, there has been ongoing research strengthening our understanding of this connection between school board practice and student outcomes. And this research grounds all the work that we do at OSBA. So OSBA, if you look at our strategic documents, we're aimed at improving student outcomes. We do that work by working with school boards, but we're really trying to raise the bar with kids. So our previous board self-assessment was based in the 5 roles of the board, which came out of the lighthouse inquiries. So it's because the research has matured quite a lot, we have transitioned to the balanced governance model, who was the PhD advisor for Mary Delagardelle, who did the lighthouse inquiries. He and Phil Gore have written a book called Improving School Effectiveness, a Balanced Governance Approach, which articulates a balanced governance sort of idea, a way of thinking about board practice. So just to hit the high points of what are those behaviors that are associated with effective boards that have positive impacts on student outcomes. And I'm really want to draw your attention to the left-hand side of the screen here. The first one is setting a vision and goals, setting that vision for what education should look like in the Creswell School District. The next one is setting is climate and resources. This is really about building a culture in your district and allocating resources that are aligned to that vision and goals of every student succeeding. Next one down is data and monitoring. We know today that every school board needs to be data savvy. Prior to No Child Left Behind, I think we probably could have gotten away with not digesting data. Today, we just simply have to be able to use that in our decision-making processes and monitor the progress of the district using data. Cohesive teaming is just a specialized way of saying what you're doing right now. The board is meeting with the superintendent and other members of the staff in the room, learning about a particular topic. In this case, it's board self-assessment. So it's the whole idea of working as a professional learning community to increase our skill and efficacy. The next one is stakeholder and community engagement. That should ring a bell from 5 roles of the board. That's one of the 5 and an important one. The board sits in between the institution of K-12 education and the public, and you are that interface. You are bringing that input from the community into the district, and you are also celebrating and communicating those successes back out into the community. And then the last one is policy and accountability, that we affect, we operationalize our cohesive will as a board through policy and hold the system accountable through policy. So these are the behaviors that are associated with highly effective boards that have positive impacts. And just to recap this, having, vision and goals, setting that climate and allocating resources aligned to those goals, tracking progress using data, working together as a PLC in that cohesive teaming mode, being those, engaging stakeholders and being that interface with the community, and holding the system accountable through policy. All right, but there are also behaviors associated with low performing boards that have negative impacts on student outcomes. And so we can take a quick look at those. Here's a couple of studies that were done a little while ago, but are still pretty fresh. Lee and Edens found that boards that don't spend their time wisely, have disorderly meetings, that have poor relationships in the boardroom and outside, tend to have lower student outcomes and are less effective. Members coming in, with their own agenda, less focus on policy items, people taking up too much time, usual misbehavior that we shouldn't be familiar with, but we all know what these bad behaviors are. And it may not be on your school board, maybe it's on your city council. We see these behaviors pop up in meetings. DeVerix and O'Brien on the other side, boards that are only vaguely aware of school improvement initiatives. And this really speaks to that balanced governance role, that we don't want to be a disengaged board where, the superintendent can say whatever they want and, staff can bring whatever they want and we're okay. We want to understand how curriculum is being delivered in the classroom. What does instruction look like? That doesn't mean that we're specifying what teachers are going to do. We're not going to script things for teachers. We're not going to micromanage them. We want to be somewhere in between. And so that's when we want to be in that balanced governance space. We're going to talk a little bit more about that a little later. This next one down, refer to external pressures as the reason for lack of student success. This is really about making excuses for low student outcomes. and we've heard these narratives before. Sometimes we're blaming teachers. It's the teachers union. They just want to be paid more and want to work less. If we could just get the teachers to work, then we'd have good student outcomes. Or maybe we want to blame parents. Oh, if the parents would engage, if we had engaged parents, well, then we'd have better student outcomes. When then the fact is that student outcomes, or the responsibility for student outcomes, really resides with the school board. So if we don't have the student outcomes that we expect, then that means the system is not meeting the needs of kids, and that's on us. That's not on somebody else. So external blaming, we shouldn't indulge in that. Micromanagement, I think we all know what that is. More blaming, using anecdotes and personal experiences instead of evidence to drive decision making. We should, that doesn't mean we don't bring our values into the room. It doesn't mean we don't bring our experience, but we have to rely on evidence that we can trust for making decisions. So these are some of the qualities of low performing boards that have negative impacts on student outcomes. And here's a slide that kind of recaps it. We shouldn't be micromanaging. We want to take responsibility for student outcomes and not blame people outside of our organization or even outside of the board. Having poor relationships, not conducting our business with care and respect, spending less time on students. This is a really key point here. And the way they measure this, it's actually kind of very simple. They have grad students sit down and watch videos of school boards and they have a stopwatch, and they just measure how much time the board spends talking about the needs of students and student achievement. Boards that spend more time on kids tend to have better outcomes. Boards that spend less time talking about kids and are distracted by other problems, adult problems, tend to have lower student outcomes. And then that last bit about anecdotes and agendas and not relying on data. Okay, but how do you know? How do you know if you're doing well? How do you know if you're not doing well? And it's a legitimate question. And the reality is it's a kind of a tough situation for school boards because, none of you knew anything about school governance before you got elected and ended up on the school board. There's no class in high school about School Board 101. I mean,
that is so true.
You have to learn it on the fly. And so there's nobody outside of school boards to evaluate you because no one knows what you do. Probably your community has very little idea of what it is that you actually do. So it falls to school boards to assess themselves. It's a tough situation to be in. So it requires that we be responsible in when we do these self-assessments and try to be critical and have high expectations for ourselves. And so Lord Kelvin tells us that if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. Or Peter Drucker, who was a famous business consultant, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if we're not measuring ourselves, we can't get better. So, these questions on the left-hand side are really at the core of what self-assessment is all about. Are you meeting your own expectations for your performance? And what are the strengths of this board? And where are those areas for those opportunities for growth? Even the highest performing boards have areas where they're working on. No one is perfect. We're all human. We all place for improvement. The chart on the right-hand side is a snapshot of the overall data that you will get. Notice that, previously I would give you 5 columns of data because there were 5 standards. This is just a glimpse into kind of the complexity and the increased detail that you're going to get out of this new assessment tool. I'm really impressed by the conversations that I've already had with some districts where we've deployed this. I'm really pleased with the outcomes. I think it's a really good value for boards. My board is going through this process right now. So we're going to be taking this survey here in the next week or so. There's another thing I need to mention is that there are actually two surveys. There's a whole board survey where the unit of analysis is the whole board. And then there's a second survey on individual board member characteristics and behavior, where the unit of analysis is the individual board member. Now, we roll that data up to the whole board level because, I mean, it's tough when we're reporting on each other and that can cause problems. So we're still at a place where we're looking at whole board data, but there are actually two surveys and there are two sets of standards here. So we're going to look at the whole board survey here, where the unit of analysis is the behavior of the whole board as a unit. And then we'll look at those 10 standards for the individual ones. Okay, so the very first one, standard one, vision directed planning. So you're going to notice that these standards line up really well with those behaviors of highly effective boards that I shared with you, that the research shows that those behaviors are exhibited by boards that are effective and have positive impacts. So that's what we're really trying to measure for is, are you doing the right things? So vision directed planning, you engage staff in the community in the development of a shared vision focused on student learning. Community engagement, this is definitely a holdover from the 5 roles of the board in the previous assessment, and it's a critical role for the board. No surprise that it's here in this one. Standard 3, effective board leadership. I really appreciate this standard in the way it frames leadership because it's framed in terms of empowerment and providing authority and the ability to lead and provide the needs for kids at the lowest level. So establish focused direction and expectations that foster student learning, align authority and responsibility so decisions can be made at the most local level, creating pathways for each and every kid. The next one is accountability, an essential role of the board, holding the system accountable, having high expectations for the learning of every student and holds the district accountable for reaching those results. Next one's 5, using data for continuous improvement. Like I said, it has to be integral to the work that we do, that we need to be looking at data on a periodic basis for tracking progress. Number 6 is a new one. Back when I was, in high school, we could get away with not being culturally responsive because, having a 70% graduation rate was success. I grew up in Reedsport, by the way. So I'm bad-mouthing my own hometown, but 70% graduation rate was success. That was okay in 1986, and because, in 1986, a kid could go out and set chokers and have a job and not have a diploma. But we know today that every kid has to graduate, and the ones that don't really struggle to engage in the 21st century economy. And so we have to be culturally responsive because we have to meet every kid where they're at, because every kid has to succeed. Culture and climate, this is really about building organizational culture, that culture of continuous improvement, and creating a climate where it's positive and safe for everyone. Learning organization, I love this standard. It was kind of an aha moment when I first saw this. It was like, well, of course, that we're a governing body and we sit and govern over a learning organization. We should exemplify that in our own practice, that we would be, creating this district that functions as a self-renewing professional community that supports reflection, discovery, improvement, and success at all levels, from the individual child all the way to the individual board member. Right. And number 9, systems thinking. This really speaks to the idea that if the board makes a resource allocation or a policy change in one place, that can have cascading effects across the organization and may have unintended consequences, so that we have to think in terms of systems and to realize that we're just one, we're a school board in one district that is in a whole state, that's in a nation. And with then we're navigating, local, state, and federal policy environment. And so there's multiple systems that we're dealing with and navigating all the time. Number 10 really speaks to that idea I was talking about. Remember, I was talking about the 70% graduation rate back in 1986. The reality is that we are still building a system. The expectations on the K-12 system, on teachers, on school administrators, and on school boards has gone up dramatically because the expectation is that every kid needs to succeed. And so it requires that we be innovative and creative because we are transforming the system as we are flying it. So it's just really a challenging place to be. Number 11 and number 12 really are those, really familiar standards. This one, 11, is about board member conduct and ethics, and conducting our work with care and respect. The other one is budgeting and financial accountability, because we have to be good stewards of public resources. Okay, any questions about the standards? I'm talking fast because I want to get through the content quickly because I know you have a long meeting.
Okay, I'm picking it up. I like the standards. I think these are good.
I really like them too. Okay, so now, so we were thinking about the board as a whole unit. This is how the whole board behaves. Now, this next survey is you will be reporting on yourself, and you'll be reporting on each of your colleagues. Now, we take that all that data is anonymous. Even I won't know how you report on each other. We never get to see any names, but we'll take that data and we will roll that up to the whole board level. So for example, on the screen, this was a 5-member board. You'll notice that there are 2 columns, one with 24 responses and the other with 1, because there was 5 times 5 is 25 responses. So we roll it up to the whole board level. It's completely anonymous, but it measures different things. It measures, how do we work together? Do we have a shared understanding of how we operate? What is our leadership style? Or what are the leadership styles that are emergent on our board? And just how we interact and work together. So this is the first characteristic or standard, role boundaries. On the left-hand side, it's probably a little hard to see maybe, although we're virtual, so you can probably see this okay. On the left side is disengaged. It would be a disengaged board member. I'm not really participating. I'm not asking hard questions. I'm just kind of coasting along. On the right-hand side, I'm overreaching. I'm the board member that goes into the superintendent's office and tells him which coach to hire. So I'm the micromanaging one. So overreaching. We don't want to be in either of those spaces. We don't want to be on either pole on this characteristic. We want to be right there in the middle, right where this board was. Okay, so we'll walk through these standards and give you an idea, give you a taste of what these are. I will let you know that in this survey, there's a paragraph on each of them describing what you're evaluating yourself on, so to support you in making those scores. So we don't, you don't have to absorb all this. This is just to kind of get you oriented to this concept before you take the survey. Okay, so standards. So that first one, we already talked about that, role boundary, disengaged versus overreaching. Pretty easy concept. Next one is role orientation. Do I focus on open dialogue, or do I like polarizing debate? Do I speak in polarizing ways? Do I try to polarize my colleagues? Advocacy focus. Is my advocacy positional or is it interest-based? So when we say positional, am I really focused on particular policy positions? Saying, we have to have natural grass on the football field. That's the only thing we can have. I'm being kind of silly. It's kind of a small issue. Artificial turf is just unacceptable. We can't do that. Has to be natural grass or nothing. So that would be a very strong position, or taking a positional, role orientation advocacy focus versus interest-based. Well, what's going to work best for kids? What's going to, use resources best for the best outcomes for kids? So interest-based versus positional advocacy focus. Number 4, student concern focus, broad focus versus targeted. So this is really about, am I showing up for all kids and really focused on the success of all kids, or am I coming really representing one constituency group or one part of one student group? Solution focus is really about, am I coming with or trying to have one size fits all solutions, or am I trying to empower people at the lowest possible level in the organization to create those local contextual solutions to create pathways to success for every kid? Number 6 is exercise of influence. A lot of these kind of nest within each other. This one is about individual authority versus collective authority. Of course, we all know that board members only have authority when we are gavelled into a public meeting and we have power in concert with each other, right? But it doesn't always feel that way. Am I trying to exert my individual authority over the board or over staff members? Or am I working collectively with my colleagues on the board to advance a particular agenda? Use of voice. Do I tell and sell my position, or am I seeking to hear and understand? Use of power, kind of on this theme, power over versus power with. Am I trying to have power over the board and other people, or am I trying to have power with my colleagues? Decision-making style, again, individually or collaboratively. And then this last one is motivation for service. People show up for school board for lots of different reasons. Of course, on cue, we will always say we're here to advocate for kids, but we all know that in some communities, being on school board does confer a certain amount of prestige. So everybody shows up for different reasons. So, are we showing up for those altruistic or personal reasons? And so those are the characteristics or standards that go into that second survey, that it really is focusing on the individual, but we're reporting it at the whole board level. So produces some interesting conversations. So even the board that I used as an example, they really they're a very cohesive board with a very positive relationship with their superintendent. Even they had some data that produced some interesting conversations. So there's good stuff here. Okay. So I want to briefly go over the board development cycle. Board roles and responsibilities. If my recollection serves, this is a fairly high tenure board. Yeah, yes. You have lots of experienced board members. Is there anybody really new?
No, I think most of us have at least a few years under our belt by now.
Great. So we can set roles and responsibilities aside. When you have turnover or if there's an election, then we might want to consider doing a roles and responsibilities just so everybody understands what they're responding to. Because as we said, there was no, you didn't know what you were doing until you got onto the board and, actually did some of the work. So it's hard to respond to these surveys if you're brand new on the school board. So the first step is to go ahead and do the self-assessment, either, just the whole board one, or you can optionally do the individual characteristics one as well. You will get some sort of you will get a debrief from me. So we're going to produce data reports from this. You will get those ahead of time. You will be able to have time to digest that, mark them up, make lots of notes, have insights about it. I'm going to use some tools here that we have internally here to look at that a little more fine and tease out some themes. And then we're going to debrief that. We'll just walk through the reports and have those conversations about what comes up. And then we are going to set goals. It's a really key important. We're going to set aside a significant amount of the time to do this piece. What are you folks going to do in response to the information that you got? It's kind of the so what moment. It's like, okay, we got this information. So what? Now what do we do? You need to do something with the new information. So we're going to set some development goals, and then you go out and do that. And that can be doing work with OSBA. Love to work with you, but it doesn't have to be. You can do your own book studies. You can go get your own curriculum. There's lots of stuff that you can do. Go to conferences. There are other consultants out there. So we're not the only game in town. I don't want you to think that you have to work with me on that, but I would love to work with your board. Okay, so just to recap what you get out of this service. So the surveys are deployed online, so you can sit in the privacy of your own home. I will warn you that each of these surveys takes about 25 minutes to a half an hour to do. So get a cup of coffee and relax a little bit as you go through these, because you're going to be there for a little bit. You will get data reports, like I said. You will get my analysis. You will get a facilitated debrief with a goal setting session. In the future, we would like to do individual reports and mentoring, but we are not there yet. So someday we're taking that individual characteristics and behavior report and actually providing a mentoring opportunity. I would love to have that opportunity myself to get that feedback from my colleagues and work with someone to help me improve my practice. And then the last piece to this is just using the same measurement tool over time allows you to track your progress on the areas where you want to show growth. So that's the last piece to that. This is kind of the so what. I've given you a bunch of information. I'm happy to answer questions, but the two questions that I have for the board is, A, are we going to do a board self-assessment? Are you going to work with OSBA to do your self-assessment? And then B, if so, do you want to do that second optional individual characteristics and behavior survey in addition to the whole board survey? It's not an additional cost. You get it for free. We'll debrief them both, and we can set goals from that as well. So that's the information that I would need from the board, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Vince, thank you for that. That's super helpful. I love the standards and I love the cycle. The one, especially, I love the board goals and then moving into like individual development plans, because that's where we've always kind of fallen short before with figuring out how to do that. And so you would, with your service, you would come back and do the debrief and then help us figure out what board goals like and where we should focus. Because I also don't want to have 10 areas to improve. I have to have one to improve at a time. For myself.
Although I will tell you that this survey will produce a lot of areas for growth just because it is so comprehensive, but definitely prioritizing, get it to three. You know, when I worked with OSU Extension, I did a lot of work with the Ford Family Foundation, and they have this rule internally, keep it to five bullets on anything, you know, so really 3 is even better. If we can keep it to 3 things and just really focus our attention, that's what we want to do.
Okay. What questions do any board members have about this? Or feedback? So the first bit of feedback I think Debbie and I need in order to figure out how to do a board evaluation is, one, I'm assuming we want to. So if you are not interested in a board evaluation, then I think we need to hear that. So speak up, please. And then, do we want to use this tool? Do we want to give this tool a try?
I think we need to try something other than what we've been doing, because we're not moving the dial, or at least I don't know that we know we're moving the dial. So
Yeah.
I'm on board with trying anything new.
I think this is a good way forward.
Okay, great.
Lacey, I'd be good with both of these too. I'd really like to see us do that.
Okay, thanks.
So timeline wise, once we take our evaluation, what is the turnaround on like getting the data back to us?
Great question. So once you finish the survey, I really would like, a couple weeks. I'm doing a lot of these. I mean, I have 5 in the hopper right now, and there may be more coming. So a lot of boards do self-assessment at this time of year. So scheduling is going to start being important. But usually I like to have a couple weeks with the data before I meet with the board, so I can have my head wrapped around it,
Sure.
So we usually leave the survey open for about, I would say a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks, just to give people time. It just seems to be hard to get all members to respond. And so we send out lots of reminders. So yeah, you'll get an initial email from me with lots of instructions in it on how to go through the survey, and the surveys have instructions within them. And then you'll get reminder emails as well.
Mark, how are you feeling about this? Hold on, I can't hear you yet.
You're muted still.
At first, I have to figure out how to unmute myself. Good idea.
You like it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I am hearing a consensus of being able to use this tool, Vince. So thank you for bringing that to us. In terms of brainstorming and knowing, we have both unions are bargaining right now. And so we've got board members that are kind of swamped with that. What does the board think about if we opened up the evaluation tool and we tried to have it completed by the time of like our June meeting? And then Vince has essentially all of July, he can kind of put it at the bottom of the list, and then it can be one of our agenda items in August when we come back, because all of us are returning. We'll have fresh minds. The school year and all the spring hecticness would be over. It would be a good time to focus on it. If that doesn't feel like that's too delayed.
I would say that is a fairly common practice. I have at least one other district that is doing, or other board that is doing that, and they're going to be overlaying they want to overlay their board goals with their district goals. So what are they going to work on district wise? So they want to have that conversation kind of at the same time. And so that's a really effective time to do that, is if you folks are going to have a retreat this summer with the superintendent and staff, it's a good time to kind of take these two ideas and put them together.
Okay, can I get head nods or thumbs up if that timeline feels okay for folks? Okay, my thought around that we should probably get the survey done by our June meeting, because once we adjourn in June and we know we're on a summer break, we're not going to get anybody's attention. So if we know we have from May to June to get it done, we'll get it done. Okay, all right. That's really good feedback. Thank you for that. Vince, Debbie, and I will kind of just email with you to figure out like what do we need to do to get this going? If we need to write a contract with you, we'll just work out the logistics and figure that out.
Sounds good. Yeah. And the one thing that I want to leave the board with is that, there's this saying that if the board makes a mistake that night, it's in classrooms the next day. And this really speaks to that connection between school boards and student outcomes. And I really like to try and take that saying and flip it on its head and say, when the board does something right that night, it finds its way into classrooms the next day. And I think that's particularly true, particularly when boards are meeting virtually, because you are streaming live right now. You have staff in the room. There are probably staff watching. You may even have kids watching. And you are communicating your expectations for yourselves and for the organization by doing this work. And so the one thing I want to leave you with is that what you do matters. Don't ever think for a second that you're wasting your time or that the way you do things doesn't matter, because it definitely does. So thank you for all that you're doing for kids in your community. I really look forward to coming down and visiting you folks this summer, later this summer. It'll be toasty warm in the South Valley and be a perfect time. So I'll let you get on with the rest of your meeting. I yield back to the chair.
Okay, thank you so much, Vince. We appreciate your time tonight and your optimism. We need all the positive words spoken that we can get right now. Thank you.
You got it. Have a good evening, folks.
Okay.
Take care, Vince.
Good night. Okay, thank you for the feedback. I think that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to this. Okay, we're going to move right along in our agenda. So we have the first unfinished business item was we need to make a motion to we created the vacancy last month. I need to either discuss or act on how we want to fill the vacancy. Thank you. I just needed a moment to get my words out. So we either need a motion to appoint, since we're in between elections, we need to appoint a board member, and we need to post the posting, for that. The policy indicates that we need to have criteria on how we will select an applicant. And I don't think we've had criteria in quite a while. And so one thought I had, we either just open it up using probably a really old form, or if there is one or two people that would like to form a brief little subcommittee and put together a form asking for experience and recommend criteria to do that and bring that back in June, or we can just post it now. We can work on criteria over the next month. How do people want to do this? Oh, Marilyn, do you have information to add?
Yes, well, yes.
Please help us.
We do have an application form that we've used in the past, just so you know. And I could send that out.
Yeah.
So people know what it says on there.
Yeah, okay. So one option would be is to just use the form that we've used in the past and get it out so that folks can start seeing it and apply. And then in the meantime, if one or two people want to get together and talk about what criteria we would look for, and then we can talk about that in June, and we can kind of adopt or agree by consensus on the criteria. And then if we have applicants in June, we can apply them immediately or wait if we need till August if we don't have any applicants. What are folks thinking about how we would fill this? Getting dead silence here.
I have always
yes, please.
In looking at the criteria or developing the criteria, wouldn't you be able to tap on Vince or Steve and ask them for that criteria and then kind of develop your own survey or from that?
I would imagine there's probably a lot of work that's out there that could help us. I don't think we've done any kind of an update in years. So we can rely on the old forms. I mean, not just the form, but I don't really remember much criteria before. And so I'm just interested if people want to do that, or if they just want to look at the basic questions that are asked on the form. Marilyn, can you read there's only 3 or 4 questions, not the demographic questions of like address and stuff, but one's experience and why you want to be on the board.
Right. What do you feel are the strong points of Creswell School District is the first one.
Okay.
And then there's what types of goals or areas would you identify to be strengthened for the Creswell School District during the upcoming year. Please list areas of your background that would contribute to being an effective board member. And then there's additional comment section.
Okay. Well, how do folks feel about that form? Will that provide you enough that if you have, let's say we have 2, 3, 4 applicants, will you be able to choose an applicant with those questions?
I think so.
Strengths, work on, yeah? Okay, then maybe we don't need to do criteria, is what I'm hearing.
No, I think that form's good.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to put too much criteria. I don't want to keep people from not applying. I think if you live in the community and you're eligible to run to be on the school board, I think we should at least consider them and look at their applications.
Okay, I appreciate the feedback. This is great.
So then I guess my question is, from reading this, says we may choose to interview. So at that point, if we get, let's say 3, are we going to interview 3 people, or are we just going to choose someone?
That would be what we want to do as a board. Yeah, we could choose the process. So,
So
and
in the-
I've, yeah. Go
In
ahead,
the
Debbie.
past, when you've had this, because we have obviously not done it since a lot of us have been on the board, but is there like a rubric to evaluate like those 2 things so that each board member can kind of, or do we just discuss it?
It's discussed in open meeting. And so in the time that I've been on, I can remember at one point, we had a small discussion around, the answers to those things. And then at another point, there was really no discussion. A board member just made a motion for one or the other, and then we voted that way. So, and we can decide. So if we get applications back and we need more information, we can certainly interview. The interview will be in a public meeting. So we could ask a couple more questions then at that point if we need to. Okay, so to just make it really clear, since this is a vacancy, I'd love a motion. And it can be to just appoint, and then we can see how many we have in January, or not to appoint, make a motion to post the vacancy. Thank you.
I thought we already posted the vacancy. Didn't we already post the vacancy?
I thought we declared a vacancy.
Oh, okay. You're right.
Yeah.
I move to post the vacancy.
I second.
Okay. All right. So with that motion, we will wait and see how many applications that we get in January, and then
in June.
Thank you. In January. That's a really long posting. Okay. And so do you guys I want to make sure that I'm clear. So if we have 2 or 3 or more, we will put those applications into board book. And then in June, we will decide if we need more process, or if you guys think through it enough, you're ready to make a motion, we can just go ahead and make a motion. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Okay, great. Any other questions on that motion? Yeah, Mark?
I said in June.
In June. Do I keep saying January? Goodness. Okay, it is time
And just
for me to go to
for
bed.
the public, right, to clarify, we appoint until the next election, and then that person runs for the remainder, or could choose to run. The spot will be filled for the remainder of their, which would just be, well, I guess the end of hers would have been 2023, right? Ashley's.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it would just be over. And then someone new could run. Okay.
Yeah, so the appointment would be essentially through the school year. And then it would end June of 2023, said June that time. And then, but they would run in the May 23 election if they wanted to continue. Thank you for asking that clarifying. Okay, all right, I think we are ready to vote on that because I understand the motion and what you need from Debbie and I. So all in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. All right, next item. Mike, do you want to update us on budget assumptions?
I sure would. Okay.
Thank you.
So there have been some developments since our last budget assumption report, but I kind of want to do an overview for you just so we can catch up. So we do have a decline in enrollment. It's about 9–10%. And that amounts to about $1 million in state school funding. We took a reduction, or our state school funding was reduced by $600,000 or $400,000 previously. That was the estimate that we received from ODE. And so when we gave you our ending fund balance forecast, it was at 2.9 million. They've come out with a new estimate for us in our state school funding based on enrollment. And the new estimate was $600,000 decrease in funding. So our projected ending fund balance now is 2.7 million. So a reduction of 200,000. And the reason why we are not in a cost-cutting phase or something of that nature, or reducing calendar days or what have you, is because early on last year, we started to transition our grants in and some of our staffing positions using that grant money, knowing that we were going to come into a shortfall in student enrollment. And so we were preparing for that, which is helping us absorb this reduction in funding and continue with our current level of service for our students. So we have a roll-up projection still going while we have those grants coming in. Now, those grants are going to run out in the next biennium, all but SIA. And so we have a plan to transition back into our general fund budget at that time. And our strategy still, our goal to maintain the same current level of service and staffing when we get to the next biennium. That's our goal. But we're going to continue to have a reduction in state school funding because of the enrollment. And we're in a pretty good work position right now because of the way we transferred some of those costs into the grants. And compared to what's happening across the state or even in Lane County, it's 15% reduction or decrease in student enrollment across Lane County. And then you go further out across the state, it's 30% across the state. So the legislature is going to have to balance that budget at some point on actual enrollment, and that's going to be in the next biennium. So that's my budget assumption for the night. Yes, Mark.
So this may be a silly question. So we've got a statewide 30% reduction in student enrollment. Where are those kids going? Are they all homeschooled? Are they what?
No, some have left the state. You know, we've had quite a bit of movement from our state exiting, going out to get into the economy, better economies, better situations for those families. During COVID, they left. And then we have some in homeschool, and and then there's a good number of them that are in online charter schools because they didn't want to return to public school with other kids. And everybody has their different values and beliefs of why they've done what they've done. But when you combine them all, that's what we're seeing in public education, is a 30% reduction across the state.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Good question.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay.
I appreciate the update though, Mike.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Moving on to new business. So we get to hopefully adopt the ELD curriculum that we had a presentation on before. So I need a motion for that.
I make a motion that we adopt the ELD curriculum.
I second it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Mike, just pass on. Your team does a great job. And it's pretty exciting to have new language arts curriculum across all 3 areas and get that done this year. That was great.
A huge lift and a good effort by our teams. I mean, our teams have done a great job. You're right. I'll let them know that.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you so much. All right, next item. We have some new policies to post. Does someone from the policy committee want to talk about them or make the motion?
I guess that's me. We
So I
can.
have a quick, sorry to interrupt.
No,
I have
please.
a quick question. So I'm reading through these before the meeting and they don't look ready for adoption. There's still brackets, there's redactions, there's highlights. So I was a little confused about posting these when they don't look like they're finished.
Marilyn?
So the grayed out areas is the language that the policy committee chose.
And I
That's new
understand
language.
that. And then all the red part is the part that's redacted.
That's
And then there's a lot of these that have language that's bracketed, which I am assuming it's an either or this or this. So in reading through these, like I said, to me, and maybe I'm off base here, it didn't look like these are ready to post. They're still in process.
well, the
So, yeah. Go ahead, Marilyn.
The strikeouts in the red, and sometimes they're blue and sometimes they're green.
Right.
But that I called OSBA about that, and I said, well, why is it when I try to download and it's all different colors? And they said that color doesn't matter. It's the strike through that OSBA. That's the language that they have done the strikeout for. And then the brackets, the ones that are the strike through, that was the language that was put in there so they could see that that was the language OSBA recommended, but there was a choice. The policy committee chose not to use that language, but instead chose the other, which is the highlighted. So if
Mark
the board wanted to say, no, I don't like that choice, we want to go with the other one that's a strike through, you could.
Mm-hmm. Mark, the way that I think this works is the policy committee is looking at each one of these and making the recommendations on what they want to strike through, what they want to add, what they want to choose.
Which is what we
as
did.
a board, so we as a board get to see all of those edits so that we know what is the original, what is an option, what's not. And so tonight, as we get prepared to post these for public review and comment, if we want to say, okay, policy committee, I don't think we should say hello first. I think it should be hi. Let's change that word. We know what the policy committee talked about. We know what's coming from OSBA as the recommended language. And so we see all the edits, but when we get ready to post them to the community, it's the recommended version. They're not going to see the strikeouts. They're not going to see the grade language. They're going to see what we're recommending to put out there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So Candace, are you ready for a motion or any further clarification from you? You've done policy committee for a while. You're good at this.
I think I make the motion and then we can have discussion, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to move to adopt 5 policies, policy ACD1, ACRD1. Oh, let me say that differently. I move to, do we post?
Post.
Okay.
We post them for a month and then we'll, adopt them next month.
Okay, thank you. I move to post 5 policies for review, being ACD1, ACRD1, ACBD1, ACBRD1, and ECAGG1. That's my motion.
Awesome. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks. I think I heard Mike second that. All right, any questions on those postings?
Do you want me to give a quick little update? I think I can do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be awesome.
Please do review these policies. The majority of them are fairly minimal. They're all policies we already have. The changes are those outlined to meet the expectations of either new laws or new regulations, or just clarify to make them, some of them were rather wordy, and they did a good job this year of trying to reduce some of that. But there aren't significant changes to the content of these policies, but there's clarifications and rewording in these policies. Mike, would you agree with that?
Candace, I would say that's why you're our spokesperson, because I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, all right. All in favor of posting these policies? Raise your hand. That is unanimous. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, we are moving right along. This next draft procedure is the public comment procedure that I would like to get everybody's feedback on. It is preparing us for how to move into a real person setting and handle the regulation around public comment that is now required to be equitable between virtual and in person. And so we'll stay virtual through, just until we get these adopted. So, but we'll have them adopted and ready to go by our August meeting. So that's kind of what I'm trying to prepare us for. The draft board meeting procedure, that's our current one right now, correct, Mike? Because we're only accepting written comment since we've been in virtual. Mm-hmm. And so the two possible examples, South Lane, so what Cottage Grove is doing, or Springfield, and then the other two are recommended language from OSBA. So we need to be able to treat them equitably, and we don't necessarily need to wordsmith it, but I'd like to hear from you on what you want from the public comment, both virtual and in person. With the virtual piece, if anybody is managing that, I think we're going to want some kind of sign up deadline, whether that's the previous day, 5 o'clock that day, just so that we have names of who we know, like, oh, we see 10 attendees. We're going to want to know the ones that have signed up so that we can allow them to speak, so that we're not giving all 10 people if we only have one person. Otherwise, it's real hard for them as an attendee to raise their hand, right? So we kind of have to know that ahead of time in the virtual world. The in-person world works really easy. They fill out the form as they walk in the door. That's what they've done in the past. But they need to be equitable. So if we're requiring online sign up before, they need to sign up to speak in person before as well. Correct, Mike? Like, we can't have two different deadlines.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Okay.
So do you want me to kind of explain the
Yeah.
two procedures? So
yeah, I think that would give them different examples and time to think about this.
So we have to provide equity for those that are in person and those that are online, and accommodate both. So we'd be running two systems at a board meeting. We'd need one person managing what's happening online, because they would have to take the viewers online. If they're going to make comment in a board meeting, they're going to have to bring them into the board meeting online to make comment and watch the time limit of 3 minutes and let them know they're done, and then cut them off at 3 minutes. The other person would be managing the in-person people that are at our board meeting that are there in person, and the system there for them to sign up for public comment. The sign up would have to be both times. So if the same time. So if we were going to allow equal access to public comment, we'd have to have a time certain where that comment has to be in written form. The other way to go is if whether or not you have public attendance at your meeting. So there are board meetings that are in person right now, which is like the Cottage Grove model, but they don't have in-person public attendance at their board meeting. So all of their sign-ins and public comments are coming in online to an in-person board meeting. So the board chose to be in person, but the community participates virtually. That way everyone has equal access. If they want to sign up by 5 o'clock or 1 o'clock the day of, it's all equal. It's equitable to those people because there is only one time, one deadline and one way to sign up. So those are the two different types of models for in-person board meetings, if you will.
So Mike, just for clarification, so you're saying that the Cottage Grove, they have their meetings in person, but all public comment is virtual. Is that what you're saying?
All public participation is virtual.
Right. All public participation is virtual.
Yep.
That makes the most sense to me because that's the least convoluted.
There's quite a few districts that are doing it that way because it's so messy the other way. It's
right. It's so convoluted the other way that we're going to end up making a lot of people angry. I think not everybody's going to think that they're being treated equitably. Whereas if we have the same playing field for everybody, then everybody's being treated equally. Does that make sense?
It does. And I don't think anybody has figured out a perfect way to do this.
Right.
They've been making adjustments to figure out and try to work out the conflicts that they're having, which way they have chosen to go. And so, yeah, but Cottage Grove went with this to try and feel it out because it was a common alternative to having the community in person at the in-person board meeting.
What are other people's thoughts or hopes for what our meetings look like next year?
Well, Candace is going to speak up because I'll tell you what, we wrestled. We got finished with all the other policies in the time it took us to do this one at the end. And we were still at the end. We were like, what? So.
Yeah.
All right. What do you want, Candace?
Well, so my concern was first, I want to make sure the public knows this is something that's been put in place by the state that we have to try to solve. We want to give our community members every opportunity to share comments with us that they can, that's what we're here for, is to hear what the public has to say and be a part of those processes. But unfortunately, we're put in the position that we have to, rightfully so, deal with this new law, this new regulation. And I don't want people, my big concern is I don't want people to think that us saying either we're only online or you have to turn something in by noon is in any way us trying to limit who can come in person and interact or has an opportunity to voice their concerns to us, because that is why we do this. And they should have that opportunity as a community member, as a parent, as people who are engaged with the school district. So that's my biggest concern, is how we find a way to not feel limiting. Even though it's probably for a good intention, it still could potentially feel limiting if they're like, well, everything has to be turned in by noon. I don't know. I go to school board meetings. I don't always know we have a meeting at noon, the day of the school board meeting. So I don't know that every parent out there might know that. And it might be something that they hear during the day and they have something that they want to see. And I just want to be careful we're not limiting people's opportunity to come to us and share those things.
But technically we are. We have to. We can't have a board meeting where the entire board meeting is open for just public discussion.
Okay, but that's different. Us having a limited time in our agenda is something we've always had, right?
But what I'm saying is, if 30 people turn in something by noon, somebody's not going to be able to speak at a meeting, and they're going to feel slighted. See what I'm saying? I don't see because reading through this is so convoluted that I don't think there's any way to really make it equitable. Somebody's going to feel slighted.
So if I'm reading it right, Cottage Grove is meeting as a board in person, but they still do not have people there.
Correct.
That's what I got.
Okay, but Springfield is meeting and they are allowing public comment, but that has to be turned in by noon. Okay.
There are other districts that the deadline is 48 hours before the board meeting, 24 hours before the board meeting, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock. But there's that time, that cutoff time, so that the board gets all the comments and it's equitable to everyone, that there's a time certain where you have to have it in if you want to have comment to the board.
I don't have a concern necessarily with the time. I understand that piece. Noon just feels very, I don't know. Maybe that's me. We're a very small board. We get very small comments.
I know. I feel like noon, I don't sometimes know what I'm doing before noon in a day, depending on the day. So I feel like if we were to do that, I would feel more comfortable with a later time. Like if somebody wanted to fill it out on their lunch hour and then that was by 3 o'clock or by 5 o'clock, if they realized, that was happening that day, I would be more comfortable with a later time.
Well, I'd like to know if a later time like 5 o'clock, and I would like to accommodate a later time of 5 o'clock, but Marilyn, is that manageable by you?
Well, I guess I'll just learn a new process. I don't know, having not ever done that before. Depending, I guess, on how many comments you would get. Probably.
But noon gives you 7 hours to process it. 5 o'clock gives you 2.
Right.
But on average, we have 0. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. We don't have a lot of comments generally, so I'm concerned if we make a policy that thinks we're going to get 30 or 40 when we generally get 1 to 0.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also going to be the night where we get 30 to 40.
And we process as many as we can, right? Because we only have so much time in the agenda, and that's part of the overall process of making it equitable. But in the rest of my business life, I tend to not try to make policies for the outliers. I try to make policies for the things that happen most often.
Yeah. In our current procedure, I believe it's in there. Let me just double check. But I remember this happening at one point when the district was going through the recession and we were cutting sports. We had obviously a lot of people to come and comment about that. And so what I remember Kathy using when she was managing the meeting, the caveat allows for, if there's large groups of people to come talk about the same topic, for them to choose a handful or a couple spokespeople to talk about that one topic. Because our agenda, we don't have hours, if there's a lot. So for a lot of them, if they're going to speak in person, and the sign up is 5 o'clock, they can speak virtually. We just know that to look for those names by 5 or whatever the time is. And then if they're going to come in person, that's great. And then if they want to submit the written comment, it does give Marilyn a couple hours, and whoever the chair is going to be the one that's going to be reading them and determining if they're attached to an agenda item to make sure that they are read into the record, right? So there's kind of 3 different forms of that public comment can take. It's the email that has the full verbiage that we would read, or it's a virtual person speaking live, or an in-person person speaking live. So I'm hearing that we want a pretty open process. I would agree with that as well. For a small community, it feels more friendly if we have something. I would think it's our procedure. We can also change it if we hear feedback from folks that, if we set it at 5 o'clock and we hear people going, I just barely get off work, I haven't even thought about the evening, we can change it when we need to. It's our procedure. We can do what we want.
And on the flip side, if it's overwhelming and it's not working because of the time being too late, we can move it back up. I just don't, since I've been on the board, there hasn't been a lot of public comment. So, to the point of the good, that we would know who was coming to speak. We wouldn't know in an open board meeting until they got there. Generally, they don't have to, prior to this, they didn't have to notify us of coming.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Let's try 5 o'clock, but if it's overwhelming, then for Maryland, we can move it to whatever we need to, but let's try to be as accommodating as we can for now.
I do think Mark's comment of, and I think we have this right now, is that the amount of time in the agenda for public comment still should be a finite amount of time. It can't be the entire agenda, right? I think that's always been our practice, though, and 3 minutes has been our overall practice, right? And I could be wrong, but
yep, that's what I'm remembering.
The current one is 3 minutes with 20 minutes total allocated.
So then, so you want the public in the meeting, or you're thinking the public's in person with the board in person?
No, I like the board in person with the public virtual.
Oh,
I do. That's far less convoluted than trying to accommodate, I don't know.
How are people feeling about allowing public participation, just having an audience?
I miss it. I miss having people around. I'm sorry. I really love sitting in my kitchen and talking to you all, but I really do appreciate people when they come, and I like to see them, and I appreciate their interest in being there to support us and us to support them.
And I agree 100%. I'm not saying I don't want to see people at a meeting. What I'm saying is, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, reading through these procedures, they are so ambiguous that I don't know.
Well, we'll come back together as a policy team now that we have this information. And we can beat that policy up and try to get it.
Beat that horse till it's dead.
Get it right. Yeah, finally.
Simple and clear. Simple and clear.
They are right now. They are not simple and clear right now.
I know that's the purpose for the discussion, is I think we all needed to get clear on what our intent is, so that we can write a procedure that is simple and clear, so that we're ready to go for August, and we can explain to the public how to be able to use the, this public meeting process to be able to interact with us.
Yeah, we definitely want to have our procedures very clear on this, and I'm going to have to work with the committee here and include Marilyn and how we can, how we can work this out with running the 2 systems.
Is there a second system, though? If we make all public comments by 5, everyone would have to email a comment, right? If they come in person, they would have missed the deadline. I can't say I love that, but that we do have to draw that line because of the regulation, right?
We could do that, and if they provided written comment after that deadline, yeah, then that would be considered for the next board meeting.
Yeah, and not that I love that, but I think that the change in law kind of puts that in place, that we do, as much as I don't like it, we do have to have some line on that.
And I mean, ideally, people are, if they're looking for, I need to talk about, something at the school board, they're seeing the agenda. We can, I don't remember all what's in a public notice, but maybe there's also, an ability to put in the public notice, if you want to speak, virtually or in person or send comment, everything has to be in by 5. So maybe we can just advertise that in several places to hopefully catch people. Because if they're looking for the agenda, we can attach it to that somehow.
Well, that's another option on whether or not you want to just accept written comments or verbal and written from both. That's another option that's in this policy.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing both. People want folks to be able to come to the audience and speak with us if they would like to. So that's what I'm hearing.
It's an option. So,
okay.
So then that brings up our earlier discussion, Mike, regarding security with virtual comments to a board meeting.
and that's, when we open it up that way, that
What keeps somebody from board bombing us, with something that's inappropriate?
So
we just have to have them sign up ahead of time with their name, address, and all that, and verify that that's who that is in some way when Joel is letting them in to the panel.
Can I speak to that real quickly? Just simply say
Yes,
that
please.
I am concerned about the 5 o'clock time for a virtual, because you're only allowing 2 hours for someone, maybe that someone's me, to get an invite to that person to be able to attend the meeting. Just like I sent an invite to you guys. I have to have a verified email address to send it to. I have to make sure that they're going to log in at that time. There's a lot of logistical pieces that I would have to work out. And some of those we could talk about at the committee point. I just want to share that, though, that just so you know, there's a piece to that puzzle that we have to keep in mind.
No, I think this is the time to talk about that one, because that's.
Yeah. So with Zoom, do they need an invite, or do they is the instruction, if you want to talk virtually, then you have to log in using the link that's posted on the website, and your name needs to match on the attendee list the name that you're registering. And then when Marilyn says, okay, chairperson, we have Joe Smith that wants to talk, we can say, okay, Joe Smith has signed up. Can you promote him or allow him, maybe just allow him to talk? Because I think there's a difference, right? Allow to talk versus a panelist.
There is, and that is one angle you can do. I guess what I was going at is I've seen it both ways, just like we're seeing a lot of different things across the state. But what you just described would be the safest, because they would simply log in, register to be an attendee. You still have to register, and you still have to put your name. And your point is well taken, that we would make sure that name has to match the comments. So we would match those
sign up.
Yeah. I think it would be interesting. This is again a discussion item. Do we require them to have the camera on? Do we not have their camera on? And the reminder of the 3 minutes. And does that mean that I cut them off? Or those are all those things that I would like to hash out at some point with someone to tell me what we need to do.
Well, 5 o'clock is too late, and I agree. I mean, there's a lot of logistical things that have to happen inside of 2 hours. And not to be a stick in the mud, but if it's important enough for you to want to make comment at the board meeting, it should be important enough for you to make a note to yourself to say, I need to have this in by noon or whatever on the day of the board meeting. Is that unreasonable?
I don't think it's unreasonable, Mark. I think that we're trying to figure out the pros and the cons and the best balance that we want to try.
I agree. And we are here to serve our constituents, but do they not also have some some responsibilities as well. If I want to speak at a board meeting, I have to make a note to myself that by noon or whatever time, I have to have my comment in. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think 2 hours is cutting it way too, that's going to make it hard on Joel and Marilyn and anybody else that's involved in that process, the screening process especially.
So what is our process now? What time is it now
Noon the
It
day
is
of the
noon.
meeting. Correct.
for the online?
But the
Well,
window,
it doesn't say online. This is just our current procedure. Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, because we used to let you just show up to the meeting with
Yeah.
a new topic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
12 p.m. the date of the board meeting.
I think you also would want to tweak that language to also include the 20-minute, if there's a time limit overall for it, we'd want to have that up front so people know that. And what Lacey, you mentioned about the grouping up, potentially like what Kathy, I remember Kathy doing that. So that's a good point to bring up because I remember those days. And that could be something you'd want to have in practice, but I would suggest having that in the procedure somewhere so people can know that that may be something that is called into or a strategy that's used, so that folks understand that I was going to talk tonight. Oh, but actually I'm talking about the same very topic as these folks over here. Just a thought.
Joel, for someone to sign up for a comment, the window is from one board. I mean, is there a limited window, limited time? They can, it's from one boarding to the 12 o'clock of the next board meeting, right? So they have a whole month.
They do. They actually do. And the thing to keep in mind though is I'm just throw this out is what drives your comments would probably be the topics of the day, which show up on the agenda. So you're right. They can email anytime from one board meeting to the next if they have just a topic out of the air that they want to talk about. But if they see the agenda and the agenda generates comments, that's where your more restricted time kicks in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Technically though, right, anyone can come and make a public comment regardless if it's an agenda item.
That's exactly right. That's been past practice for you guys for many years, is that someone could come in and say, and that's on the sign-up sheet. The sign-up sheet actually says, is this on the agenda? And if it's not, then you put down what it is you want to talk about.
Right. And for me, that's important because there are things that I might have no idea that's ever going on if someone didn't bring it up. And I wouldn't want to limit that.
But the board chair does screen that before it comes into the meeting, right?
Right. But we've always done that, right?
Yeah. And Marilyn, you can speak to this too, but just from my past I've been, obviously we've all been to board meetings. And so in the past, when we've had those few comments, when there's been someone who wanted to talk about something at the board that wasn't on the agenda, but it happened to be something that actually was not appropriate for the board, the board chair has that ability to recognize that and actually make a comment to the effect of, this is something we're going to direct to our superintendent to address directly with you. And then the person in the audience usually understands that and they move on.
Yes.
So there's rare occasions where that might happen.
Rare, yes.
Does that make sense what I just?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we've given a lot of feedback. I'm hearing an overall consensus of we want to remove as much obstacles as possible for people to talk. We know we need to make it equitable and we need to make sure we can actually process what we need to process probably as simply as possible. Can we have our policy group draft that up with you, Mike?
Yes.
And I don't think, I think we've stated here, we know we need to try some kind of time limit. So whatever the policy team wants to bring forward after you guys talk with staff and Mike and figure out like that balance between what time they need to do the logistics of it and giving as much time to the public as possible. At least in my perspective, I think we just need to have something. Let's try it. And if it doesn't seem to work or it's clunky, then we can highlight that and change it mid-year. So, okay, thank you. Really great discussion. I appreciate that. So policy team can chat about that and bring us back something that we can discuss and vote on in June so that we're ready to go in August.
Yeah, we
Okay.
love to chat.
Good. All right. We are going to move through trustee reports pretty quickly, and all of our other reports, just so that we make sure we have time for our executive session at the end before people fall asleep on me. All right, trustee Mike, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can really quickly. I've been to a middle school track meet. We've been involved in bargaining meetings, a couple sessions. I went to a Lane ESD meeting last night. And I'm going to meet with a couple companies in town that working with a young lady at the high school to see if I can't get some tours of some different companies for some young kids coming out of school that need jobs. Try to get something set up to help them. I'm going to start with Wildish and pick at a couple other companies and see if we can't figure out a way to get some tours, get the guys ride through the or walk through the factory or whatever it might be, but see if we can help a little bit. Other than that, that's about
fantastic. Okay, that's fantastic, Mike. Thank you. Mark, anything you want to share?
Nope, nope, I don't. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, Debbie?
The unmute's the hardest part. Couple bargaining meetings. My first leadership meeting with Lacey and Mike, and the booster auction, which I saw many of you at, and I super appreciate all your support. It went very well. So that is about all I've done.
Okay, about all. That's a lot. That's good. All right, Tim?
Bargaining team meeting on April 21st, April 28th, and May 3rd. Then bargaining with the teachers on April 28th. Kiwanis Scholarship Committee meeting on April 29th, and then the booster auction on May 7th. That's all.
Fantastic. Thank you. You've been busy too. Candace?
I wish I was as organized as Tim, because I have no idea what days I've done anything. So we did have a policy meeting, as you have seen the outcomes of. And I also was able to go to the booster auction. So thank you, Debbie, for all your guys' hard work on that. And we're excited that we may be the recipients of a new scoreboard from all your hard work. So thank you for that. And then obviously softball every evening and weekend.
How's it going with the large number of girls? We mentioned that last time. So how are the teams doing?
Good. I actually got here a little bit late because JV had a game, and so they played. They unfortunately lost to Thurston, but it was a good effort. And varsity, we had a great preseason. We've had a rough go in league so far. We have a tough league. We have probably one of the best leagues in the state. But if we can win our next 3 games, which we can win, we could make it to the playoffs, which is exciting because it's been a long time since Creswell softball has been in the playoffs. So we're excited for those girls and those kids to have that experience. So that's awesome.
That is fantastic.
And senior night is going to be on Friday. If anyone is around, it will be our senior night for softball. We have 5 amazing seniors. Carter is one of them, who is joining us earlier tonight.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's great. All right. I have had the usual stuff. The food delivery that I do for the kiddos on Fridays, IRC Friday mornings. We've had a lot of bargaining, leadership meetings, and then I've made a couple track meets for both the middle school and the high school. So that's been fun. Okay. All right. Let's move on to business manager report. Any questions? I think we still have Chanel on. So if there's any questions or anything you want to highlight, Chanel, feel free.
I think I'll save most of my highlights for next week.
Okay.
Next Wednesday.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move quickly. So it's like raise your hand quick if there's something that you're wanting to ask about technology and facilities. Kids are loving the field, Joel. Okay. Transportation. It's a heck of a lot of miles they've driven, by the way, 22,000 miles for the month of April. It's pretty amazing. Student services report. Amy, thank you again for working through the ELD curriculum piece. Your team did a great job with that.
Yeah, good work. Thank you.
Yeah. Questions for Julie on community engagement?
Well, we have a new website.
Oh, Candace, good job on raising your hand quick.
Right.
Yes, I love the website.
Yes, I do love the website and I've been checking it out. Julie, I sent her an email today about one of my questions, but I do have a question of, do we have a place on the website to see site meeting council meeting minutes? I was looking for them the other day and I have no idea how to find them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I said, I'll have to check in with Brandon. I said, the high school has been maintaining what was there before, but I said, I've been meeting with the principals and staff to find out what sort of questions have come up. And that's the next focus, is addressing each of the 3 websites.
Okay.
So that it's sort of a common experience. What we're hoping is that we can get the 3 sites aligned. So as students age up through, it will be easier to find, because that's what kind of have a common experience where this is where I go to look for these things. So
I found the middle schools, but is there a place that any of the other schools where they post their site council meeting minutes, or who's on the site council? Jenny?
I thought that ours were linked, but I will double check that. We do have our minutes. They are there. We have a student who's taking our minutes, so be gracious when you read them. She's doing a fabulous job.
Sounds
That's
good.
really good
Okay.
experience, actually. Minutes
It is
taking.
really good. Yep.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
double check that and get it out.
Okay. Anything else for Julie? Okay, elementary school. Any questions for Amy? Or do you want to highlight anything for us, Amy? No obligation, just if you want to.
It's spring and it's busy. I felt like, yeah, there's a
Okay.
lot. That's what I'll say.
Spring and it's busy. That summarizes a lot. Middle school. Any questions for Julie? Julie, I did love the kind of like run up to state testing that you did. That actually put a positive spin on that for kids. So good job on that.
Thank you. And we are doing our leg of the World Championship Kid Relay on Monday after school. So kids are excited about that. We got our kit finally. I think those people were really tired of me bothering them because our kit hadn't come in the mail, which we're supposed to have the kit in order to complete our leg of the relay.
Yeah.
So the kids are excited. So we'll be doing that Monday after school.
Awesome. Awesome. That is very cool. All right, high school, anything for Jenny? A lot of state testing, a lot of AP testing going on.
And I just want to note that I missed getting the spring concert for the high school in on the 24th. I'm not sure how I missed that because I have it in my notes, but the 24th from 7 to 9 is the high school band spring concert. So that's going to be awesome. And just a note on the Revite grant that just happened in the last couple of days. We have put in our purchase order for the purchase of some new welding machines and some new booths. So that is moving along. I'm super excited.
That's great. That's great. And you said that concert was 7 to 9, May 24?
Correct.
Okay. Great. That's fantastic. Okay. All right. Mike, do you want to highlight anything from your report?
You see what the things that I've been involved in, but I do want to call out the advisory update meetings with ODE, COSA, OHA, and Lane ESD. They announced a week ago that they had the new RSSL plan that's going to be required for us to submit to them by August. I think it's middle of August. And that's the reopening schools plan for 22-23. So the COVID-19 management plan. And they have new requirements in that plan for us as far as operational procedures and managing procedures for the spread of the virus. So it's it's changing. I mean, they rolled out the initial draft of it, and they've made some changes for us in there. Well, actually not for us, for them. They just delivered them to us, and so now we're starting to see what's in front of us for that. And it is required in order to get grants, SIA and ESSER. So
Okay.
kind of held hostage on that one, but that's it. That's my highlight for the night.
Okay. Okay. Before we move into executive session, I just want to highlight that we've got a couple budget committee meetings coming up. So either make sure they're already on your calendar or verify, but we have one budget committee meeting May 18th, a second one on the 25th if we need it. So note that. And then I need to read a statement for us to move into executive session. And just for all of the staff that's on the call with us tonight, we are not going to return into open session. So when we close executive session, it'll close our board meeting. All right, here is my script. The board will now meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602D. Representatives of the news media shall not be allowed to attend. All others not invited by the board are asked to leave the meeting, and have a great evening, by the way. The board would like to invite the superintendent, Mike Johnson, our board secretary, Marilyn Cruzan, and Mr. Tim Keeley, our labor relations consultant for negotiations, to remain for this session. Cameras and tape recorders and other recording devices shall not be used during the executive session. No decision will be made in executive session, and at the end of the executive session, the board will not return to open session. All right, so we'll move into executive session. We'll say goodnight to all the